poor female police officer saved a billionaire from kidnappers. Sarah sat by the window, her eyes scanning the quiet street outside the safe house. It was the second day since the kidnapping attempt, and the police still hadn't caught the men. Her radio stayed close, crackling with updates, but none brought good news. She glanced at Ethan, who was sitting on the couch, flipping through an old magazine from the safehouse's table. He looked tired, his bruise fading but his eyes heavy. Sarah felt a tug in her chest. She was supposed to protect him, but it was more than that now. She cared about him more than she wanted to admit. Ethan put the magazine down, catching her eye. "You ever get tired of watching the street?" he asked, his voice light but curious. Sarah smiled, leaning back in her chair. "Not really. Keeps me sharp." Ethan nodded, his gaze lingering on her. She was different from anyone he'd met, strong, honest, real. He wasn't used to that. "You're good at this," he said, "keeping me calm." Sarah laughed softly. "You're not so bad yourself. Most people would be freaking out by now." They'd been stuck together for 2 days, waiting for the police to find the kidnappers. The safe house was small, just a living room, a bedroom, a tiny kitchen, but it felt safe with Sarah there. They talked a lot, sharing stories about their lives, their fears. Ethan told her about his mom, how she'd sing to him when he was scared as a kid. Sarah told him about her dad, how he'd cheer at her school track meets, even when she lost. Those talks made the hours pass, and each one pulled them closer. That morning, Sarah made coffee with the cheap machine in the kitchen. She handed Ethan a mug, her fingers brushing his. "Careful, it's hot," she said, her voice soft. Ethan took it, his eyes meeting hers. "Thanks, Sarah." There was something in the way he said her name, warm and quiet, that made her heart skip. She looked away, focusing on her coffee, but she felt his eyes on her. It was new, this feeling, and it scared her. She was a cop, he was a billionaire. This wasn't supposed to happen. They sat at the small table, the silence comfortable but heavy. Ethan broke it first. "You ever think about doing something else? Not being a cop?" Sarah shook her head. "Never. This is who I am. I like helping people, even when it's hard." Ethan nodded, his face thoughtful. "I wish I felt that way about my job. I used to love it, building something, making a difference. Now it's just meetings and money." Sarah tilted her head, curious. "You could change that, you know. Do something that matters to you." Ethan looked at her, surprised. Nobody talked to him like that, like he was just a person, not a billionaire. "You make it sound easy," he said, a small smile tugging at his lips. Sarah shrugged. "It's not. But you're smart. You'll figure it out." Ethan's smile grew, and for the first time in days, it reached his eyes. "You're something else, Sarah Parker," he said. Her cheeks warmed, and she looked down, hiding a smile. Later that day, Sarah's radio crackled with news. "Parker, we've got a lead. Suspects spotted in West Loop." "Stay put, we're handling it," Rodriguez said. Sarah's stomach tightened. She wanted to be out there, helping, but her job was here, keeping Ethan safe. She glanced at him, sitting on the couch, his eyes on her. "They're getting closer," she said, her voice steady. Ethan nodded, his face tense. "You think they'll find us?" Sarah shook her head. "Not if I can help it." To keep them both calm, Sarah suggested they cook something. The safe house had a few cans of soup and some bread. "You ever cook?" she asked, opening a can. Ethan laughed, leaning against the counter. Not really. I've got people for that. Sarah rolled her eyes, teasing. Rich guy problems. Come on, you're helping. She handed him a spoon, and he took it, grinning. They worked together, heating the soup, their shoulders brushing in the small kitchen. It felt normal, like they weren't hiding from danger. As they ate, Ethan watched Sarah, the way her eyes crinkled when she laughed, the way she tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. You're easy to talk to, he said suddenly. Sarah looked up, surprised. You're not so bad yourself, she said, her voice soft. They held each other's gaze, the air between them warm, heavy. Ethan reached across the table, his hand resting near hers, not quite touching. I'm glad it's you here, Sarah, he said, his voice low. Her heart raced, but she didn't pull away. Me too, she whispered. That night, they sat on the couch, closer than before. The TV was on, some old comedy show, but neither was watching. Sarah's radio was quiet, but she kept it close, her gun on the table. Ethan looked at her, his voice hesitant. Can I ask you something? Sarah nodded. Sure. He took a breath. You ever been in love? Sarah's eyes widened, caught off guard. She thought about lying, but his honesty made her want to be honest, too. Once, she said. High school. He was nice, but it didn't last. He wanted a different life, not this. She gestured to her uniform. What about you? Ethan looked down, his fingers tapping the couch. Yeah, once. She was everything I thought. But she didn't love me, not really. She liked my money. His voice was bitter, but his eyes were soft when he looked at her. You're different, Sarah. You don't care about that stuff. Sarah's breath caught. She wanted to say something, but her heart was too full. Instead, she reached out, her hand covering his. You're not what I expected either, she said, her voice barely a whisper. They sat like that, hands touching, the world outside fading away. Sarah felt something new, something strong. She'd never let herself get close to anyone, not with her job, her dad's illness. But Ethan was different. He saw her, not just the cop. Ethan felt it too, a warmth he hadn't known since his mom was alive. Sarah wasn't like the people in his world. She was real, and he wanted to hold on to that. But danger wasn't far. At midnight, Sarah's radio crackled, loud in the quiet. Parker suspects escaped. Last seen near your area. Lock it down. Sarah's heart sank. She stood, grabbing her gun. Ethan, stay low. They're close. Ethan's face paled, but he nodded, moving to the floor. Sarah checked the windows, her hands steady but her mind racing. She looked at Ethan, crouched behind the couch, his eyes on her. I won't let them get you, she said, her voice firm. Ethan nodded, his voice quiet. I know you won't. Sarah moved to the door, her gun ready. She heard a car outside, its engine idling. Her radio buzzed again. Backup's 5 minutes out, Rodriguez said. 5 minutes was too long. Sarah turned to Ethan, her voice low. If anything happens, run to the bedroom, lock the door. Ethan shook his head. I'm not leaving you. Sarah's heart skipped, but she stayed focused. Do what I say, Ethan. They waited, the silence heavy. Sarah's eyes were on the door, her gun steady. Ethan watched her, his fear mixed with something deeper. He'd never met anyone like her, someone who'd risk everything for him. He wanted to tell her, but the words stuck. Instead, he moved closer, his shoulder brushing hers. "Sarah," he said, his voice soft. She glanced at him, her eyes softening for a moment. "Yeah." He swallowed. "Whatever happens, I'm glad I met you." Sarah's breath caught. She nodded, her voice barely audible. "Me too." The car outside revved, then sped away. Sarah's radio crackled. "Parker, false alarm. Vehicle was unrelated. Stand by." Sarah exhaled, her shoulders relaxing. She lowered her gun, turning to Ethan. "We're okay," she said. He nodded, his eyes locked on hers. Without thinking, he reached for her hand again, holding it tight. She didn't pull away. They sat there, hands clasped, hearts racing, knowing something had changed. Sarah sat on the couch, her radio silent for once. It was the third day in the safe house, and the waiting was wearing her down. Her eyes were tired, her body sore from staying alert. Ethan sat across from her, his phone in his hand, checking messages from his assistant, Claire. They'd spent the last few days talking, laughing, sharing pieces of their lives. Sarah felt something for him, something strong, but she pushed it down. She was a cop, he was her assignment. Getting too close was dangerous, but her heart didn't care. Ethan looked at her, his face soft. "You okay?" he asked, setting his phone down. Sarah nodded, forcing a smile. "Just tired. This waiting game's tough." Ethan leaned forward, his voice gentle. "You don't have to do this alone, you know. I'm here." Sarah's chest tightened. His words meant more than he knew, but they also scared her. She wasn't used to leaning on anyone. "Thanks," she said quietly, looking away. Her radio crackled, breaking the moment. "Parker, we've got movement. Suspects linked to a warehouse in West Loop. Sending a team now," Rodriguez said. Sarah's heart raced. "Copy, sir." "Keep me posted," she replied, her voice steady. She looked at Ethan, who was watching her, his face tense. "They're getting closer," she said. "We just have to hold on." Ethan nodded, but his eyes were worried. "You'll keep me safe, right?" he asked, half teasing, half serious. Sarah smiled. "Always." The day passed slowly, the tension building. Sarah checked the windows, her gun close. Ethan tried to stay calm, but he kept glancing at the door. They ate canned soup again, sitting at the small table. Sarah teased him about his cooking skills, trying to lighten the mood. "You're getting better at stirring," she said, grinning. Ethan laughed, his eyes warm. "Only because I've got a good teacher." Their hands brushed as they passed the bread, and neither pulled away. The air felt heavy, full of unspoken words. That afternoon, Ethan's phone buzzed with a call from Claire. He stepped into the bedroom to take it, his voice low. Sarah stayed in the living room, checking her radio, but she could hear bits of his conversation. "Claire, I told you I'm fine. No, don't come here. Just handle the board meeting." His tone was sharp, and Sarah frowned. She trusted Ethan, but something about the call felt off. She shook it off, focusing on her job. When Ethan came back, he looked uneasy. "Everything okay?" Sarah asked, her voice casual but her eyes sharp. Ethan nodded too quickly. "Yeah, just work stuff. Nothing important." Sarah didn't push, but her gut told her he was hiding something. She'd learned to trust that feeling on the job. Still, she let it go, not wanting to ruin the fragile thing between them. That night, the safe house felt smaller, the air thicker. They sat on the couch, closer than before, watching an old movie on the TV. Sarah's arm rested near his, their fingers almost touching. Ethan turned to her, his voice soft. "Sarah, I know this is crazy, but I'm starting to feel something for you." Sarah's heart stopped. She looked at him, his eyes honest, vulnerable. She wanted to say it back, but fear held her words. "Ethan, I'm your cop. It's complicated," she said, her voice shaky. He nodded, but his hand found hers, holding it tight. "I know, but it's real." Before she could answer, her radio blared. "Parker, we've got a problem. One of our guys found a leak. Someone tipped off the kidnappers about the safe house." Sarah's blood ran cold. She stood, grabbing her gun. "What? Who?" she asked, her voice sharp. Rodriguez's voice was grim. "We don't know yet. Lock it down, Parker. Backup's on the way." Sarah's mind raced. A leak meant someone inside the police, or worse, someone close to Ethan. She looked at him, her heart sinking. "Ethan, tell me the truth. Did you tell anyone where we are?" Ethan's face paled. "No, I swear," he said, standing. But his eyes flicked to his phone, and Sarah saw it. Her stomach dropped. "Ethan," she said, her voice hard. "Who did you talk to?" He hesitated just a second, but it was enough. "Claire called earlier. I told her I was safe, but I didn't say where." Sarah's heart twisted. "You told her you were with me?" Ethan nodded, his face guilty. "I didn't think it mattered. She's my assistant. I trust her." Sarah's hands shook, not from fear but from anger. "Ethan, you don't get it. Nobody's supposed to know you're here. Nobody." She grabbed her radio, calling Rodriguez. "Sir, check Ethan's assistant, Claire. She might be the leak." Ethan stepped toward her, his voice desperate. "Sarah, Claire wouldn't do that. She's been with me for years." Sarah turned, her eyes blazing. "You don't know that, Ethan. People lie. People betray. I see it every day." Ethan's face fell, hurt flashing in his eyes. "You think I'd put you in danger? After everything?" Sarah's chest ached, but she couldn't back down. "I think you weren't careful. And now we're at risk." She checked the door, her gun ready, her mind racing. The kidnappers could be outside right now, and it was because Ethan didn't listen. She felt betrayed, not just as a cop, but as someone who'd started to care about him. Ethan sat down, his hands in his hair. "Sarah, I'm sorry. I didn't think," his voice broke. "I'd never hurt you." Sarah wanted to believe him, but the sting was too fresh. "Just stay quiet," she said, her voice cold. She moved to the window, peering through the blinds. The street was dark, but she saw a shadow move, a car, slowing down, then stopping. Her heart pounded. "Ethan, get to the bedroom." "Now," she said, her voice low. Ethan stood, his face torn. "Sarah, let me help." She shook her head, her voice sharp. "You've done enough. Go." He hesitated, then obeyed, closing the bedroom door behind him. Sarah crouched by the window, her gun drawn, her radio buzzing. "Parker, backup's 3 minutes out." "Hold tight," Rodriguez said. Sarah's eyes stayed on the car outside. 2 men stepped out, their faces hidden. Her stomach twisted. They knew where she was. She radioed quietly. "Unit 12, suspects outside the safe house. 2 males armed. Need backup now." She moved to the door, locking it tight, her heart racing. She thought about Ethan, alone in the bedroom, and the hurt in his eyes. She wanted to trust him, but the betrayal cut deep. Had he really not known? Or was he careless with her life, like so many others in her world? The men outside moved closer, their steps quiet but deliberate. Sarah's training kicked in. She turned off the lights, making the apartment dark. She crouched behind the couch, her gun aimed at the door. Her radio crackled softly. "Parker, we're 1 minute out," Mike's voice said. Sarah exhaled, her hands steady. She could hold them off. She had to. The door handle rattled. Sarah's heart stopped. "Police! Step back!" she shouted, her voice loud and clear. The rattling stopped, and she heard footsteps retreating. Headlights flashed outside. Back up. The men ran, their car speeding away as police sirens filled the air. Sarah stayed low, her gun still ready, until Mike banged on the door. "Sarah, it's us. Open up." She unlocked the door, letting Mike and 2 other officers in. "You okay?" Mike asked, his face worried. Sarah nodded, her breath shaky. "Yeah." "They're gone." Ethan came out of the bedroom, his face pale. "Sarah, are you hurt?" he asked, his voice desperate. She shook her head, not meeting his eyes. "I'm fine." Mike looked between them, sensing the tension. "We're moving you to a new safe house," he said. "This one's burned." Sarah nodded, grabbing her gear. Ethan followed, his eyes on her, but she kept her distance. The trust they'd built was cracked, and it hurt more than she expected. The new safe house was colder, quieter, but the tension between Sarah and Ethan was louder than ever. His mistake had put them in danger, and Sarah's trust was broken. But danger has a way of showing what matters most. As the kidnappers closed in, Ethan would get a chance to make things right, and both would see their feelings for what they were: real, deep, and worth fighting for. Sarah stood by the window of the new safe house, a small apartment in a different part of Chicago. It was late, the city dark outside. Her gun was on the table, her radio silent but close. The move to the new location had been quick, with Mike and the other officers rushing them out of the old safe house after the scare. Sarah's heart was still heavy from Ethan's betrayal. He'd told his assistant, Claire, he was safe, and that slip had led the kidnappers to their door. She felt hurt, not just as a cop, but as someone who'd started to care about him. Ethan sat on the couch, his hands clasped, his face tired. He hadn't spoken much since they arrived. Sarah's coldness stung, and he knew he deserved it. He'd been careless, thinking Claire was trustworthy, not realizing how serious the situation was. He looked at Sarah, her back to him, her shoulders stiff. He wanted to fix it, but he didn't know how. "Sarah," he said, his voice low. She didn't turn. "What?" Her tone was sharp, professional. Ethan's stomach twisted. "I'm sorry," he said. "I didn't mean to put you in danger." Sarah turned, her eyes hard but hurt. "You didn't think, Ethan. That's the problem. I'm risking my life for you, and you told someone where we were." Ethan stood, stepping closer, but she held up a hand. "Don't," she said. "Just stay over there." He stopped, his face falling. "I didn't know, Sarah. I swear. I'd never hurt you." Sarah looked away, her throat tight. She wanted to believe him, but the fear from last night was still fresh. The silence was heavy, broken only by the faint hum of the city outside. Sarah's radio crackled, making them both jump. "Parker, update, suspects spotted near the river." We're closing in, but stay alert, Rodriguez said. Sarah grabbed the radio. Copy, sir. We're secure. She set it down, her hands shaking slightly. The kidnappers were still out there, and she was stuck here, guarding a man who'd broken her trust. But when she looked at Ethan, his eyes full of regret, her heart softened, just a little. Ethan couldn't stand the quiet. He needed to make this right. Sarah, please, he said, his voice softer. Tell me how to fix this. Sarah sighed, sitting across from him. You can't just fix it, Ethan. Trust is everything in my job. I trusted you, and you made a mistake that could have gotten us killed. Ethan nodded, his eyes on the floor. I know. I was stupid. I'm not used to this, hiding, being careful. But I care about you, Sarah. I'd do anything to take it back. Sarah looked at him, her anger fading but not gone. Why didn't you tell me you called Claire? She asked. Ethan rubbed his face, his voice honest. I didn't think it mattered. She's been with me for years. I thought she was safe. Sarah shook her head. Nobody's safe, Ethan. Not in this. You're a target, and I'm the one keeping you alive. Ethan met her eyes, his voice steady. I get that now. And I'm not going to mess up again. I promise. Sarah wanted to stay mad, but his words felt real. She saw the fear in his eyes, the guilt. She remembered their talks, how he'd opened up about his mom, how he'd listened to her about her dad. She cared about him more than she should. Okay, she said finally, her voice softer. But you have to listen to me, Ethan. No more secrets. He nodded, relief washing over his face. No more secrets. They sat in silence, the air lighter but still tense. Sarah's radio stayed quiet, but she knew the danger wasn't gone. She looked at Ethan, her heart torn. She was falling for him, but her job came first. She couldn't let her feelings get in the way. Ethan watched her, his own heart heavy. He'd never felt this way before, not even with the woman he'd loved years ago. Sarah was different, strong, honest, brave. He wanted to protect her, to be someone she could trust again. Late that night, Sarah's radio crackled again. Parker, we lost the suspects. Last seen near your area. Lock it down, Rodriguez said. Sarah's heart raced. She stood, grabbing her gun. Ethan, get to the bedroom, she said, her voice firm. Ethan shook his head. I'm not leaving you this time. Sarah's eyes narrowed. Ethan, don't argue. Go. But he stepped closer, his voice steady. I messed up once. I'm not hiding while you face this alone. Before Sarah could respond, a loud bang came from the door. She spun, her gun raised. Police! Step back, she shouted. The banging stopped, but she heard footsteps outside. Her radio buzzed. Parker, backup's 2 minutes out, Mike said. Sarah's heart pounded. She looked at Ethan, who was standing close, his face determined. Stay behind me, she said, her voice low. He nodded, but his eyes said he wasn't backing down. The door shook again, harder this time. Sarah crouched by the couch, her gun aimed. Ethan stayed close, his hand on her shoulder. Sarah, I'm sorry, he whispered. I'll make this right. She glanced at him, her heart softening despite the danger. Just stay alive, she said, her voice fierce. The door burst open, and 2 men rushed in, guns drawn. Sarah fired, hitting one in the shoulder. He fell, cursing, but the other charged forward. Ethan moved without thinking. He grabbed a lamp from the table and swung it, hitting the second man in the back. The man stumbled, giving Sarah time to fire again, hitting his leg. He dropped his gun, collapsing. Sarah rushed forward, kicking the guns away and cuffing the men. "Stay down," she shouted, her voice shaking but strong. Ethan stood behind her, his breath fast, his hands trembling. He'd acted on instinct, wanting to protect her. Backup arrived, sirens blaring. Mike and 3 officers stormed in, taking the men into custody. "Sarah, you good?" Mike asked, his eyes wide. She nodded, catching her breath. "Yeah, we're okay." She looked at Ethan, who was still standing, the lamp in his hand. "You didn't run," she said, her voice surprised. Ethan shook his head, his eyes locked on hers. "I told you, I'm not leaving you." They stepped outside as the officers secured the scene. The night air was cold, but Sarah felt warm, her heart full. Ethan had risked himself for her, proving he meant his apology. She looked at him, her voice soft. "You didn't have to do that." Ethan shrugged, a small smile on his lips. "Yeah, I did. You're worth it." Sarah's chest tightened. She realized then how much he meant to her, how much she wanted him in her life, not just as her assignment. Ethan felt it too. Standing there watching Sarah, he knew he loved her. It wasn't just gratitude for saving him. It was her strength, her honesty, the way she made him want to be better. "Sarah," he said, his voice quiet, "I don't know what this is, but I don't want it to end." Sarah looked at him, her eyes soft but scared. "I don't either," she admitted. "But I'm a cop, Ethan. My life's not like yours." He stepped closer, his hand brushing hers. "I don't care. I want you." They stood there, the police lights flashing around them, the danger fading for now. Sarah realized she loved him too, but it terrified her. Her job, her dad, her life. It was all so different from his. But looking into his eyes, she felt something she hadn't in years: hope. Ethan saw it too. He'd spent years chasing money, but Sarah was what he'd been missing. He'd made a mistake, but he'd made it right, and he'd fight to keep her. The new safe house was a temporary home, a place where Sarah and Ethan had found love in the middle of danger. The kidnappers were still out there, but their feelings were stronger than ever, tested by fear and betrayal but holding firm. As the final moments of their ordeal unfolded, Sarah and Ethan would fight for each other, not just to survive, but to build a future together. In Chicago's chaos, their love would find its way, sealing a bond that nothing could break. Sarah sat on the safe house couch, her radio quiet, her gun on the table. It was the 4th day since the kidnapping attempt, and the waiting was heavy. Her eyes were tired, but her heart was full. Ethan's courage last night, when he'd helped her fight off the attackers, had rebuilt her trust. She looked at him, sitting across from her, his face bruised but his eyes soft. She loved him. She knew it now, deep in her chest. But she was scared. Her life as a cop, her dad's illness, their different worlds. It all felt like too much. Ethan watched Sarah, his heart racing. He'd never felt this way, not even in his past when love had burned him. Sarah was different, strong, real, the person he wanted by his side. He'd messed up, telling Claire he was safe, but he'd made it right by fighting for her. He wanted to tell her everything, to promise her a future, but he wasn't sure she'd believe him. "Sarah," he said, his voice soft. She looked up, her brown eyes meeting his. "Yeah." He took a breath. I don't know what's next, but I want it to be with you. Sarah's breath caught. She wanted that too, but doubt crept in. Ethan, my life's not like yours. I'm a cop. I'm broke. My dad needs me. Ethan stood, moving to sit beside her, his hand finding hers. I don't care about that. I care about you. We can figure it out together. Sarah's eyes stung, but she smiled, squeezing his hand. You make it sound so easy. Ethan's thumb brushed her knuckles, his voice steady. It's not. But you're worth it. They sat close, their shoulders touching, the air warm between them. Sarah's radio crackled, breaking the moment. Parker, we've got a lead. Suspects in a warehouse on the south side. We're moving in. Get Caldwell to the precinct for safety, Rodriguez said. Sarah's heart sped up. This was the endgame. Copy, sir. Heading out now, she replied. She looked at Ethan, her voice firm but soft. We're going to the station. It's almost over. Ethan nodded, his eyes locked on hers. I'm with you. They left the safe house in an unmarked car, Sarah driving through Chicago's morning streets. The city was alive, cars honking, people rushing. Sarah's hands were steady on the wheel, but her mind was on Ethan. His words echoed in her head, I wanted to be with you. She glanced at him, his face serious but warm. You okay? She asked. He smiled, small but real. With you, yeah. Her heart fluttered, and she focused on the road, hiding a smile. At the precinct, the air was tense. Officers moved fast, radios buzzing with updates. Rodriguez met them at the entrance. Parker, Caldwell, stay in the briefing room. We're closing in on the suspects, but they're armed. Don't move until I say. Sarah nodded, guiding Ethan to a small room with a table and chairs. She locked the door, her gun ready, her eyes scanning the window. Ethan sat beside her, his hand brushing hers. You're scared, he said, not a question. Sarah nodded, honest. A little. But I've got you. Ethan's heart swelled. He took her hand, holding it tight. Sarah, I need to say this. I love you. Sarah's eyes widened, her breath catching. She'd felt it, but hearing it was different. Ethan, she started, but he shook his head. I know it's fast, I know it's crazy, but I've never been this sure. You're everything I didn't know I needed. Sarah's eyes filled with tears. She squeezed his hand, her voice shaky. I love you too, but I'm scared. This life, it's not simple. Ethan leaned closer, his forehead touching hers. We'll make it work. I'm not going anywhere. They kissed, soft and slow, their hands clasped. It was a promise, a moment that felt like forever. Sarah pulled back, her eyes shining. You're crazy, Ethan Caldwell. He grinned, his thumb wiping a tear from her cheek. Crazy about you. The radio crackled, shattering the quiet. Parker, suspect escaped. Black sedan, heading toward the precinct. Lock it down. Rodriguez's voice was sharp. Sarah's heart dropped. She stood, pulling her gun. Ethan, stay behind me, she said, her voice firm. Ethan shook his head, standing close. I'm not hiding, Sarah. We do this together. She wanted to argue, but his eyes were steady, full of love. She nodded. Together. The precinct alarm blared, officers shouting. Sarah led Ethan to a corner, her gun raised, her eyes on the door. Her radio buzzed. Suspect inside. Armed and dangerous. Mike's voice crackled. Sarah's pulse raced. She thought of her dad, his voice telling her to be strong. She thought of Ethan, his hand in hers, his love giving her courage. "Stay low," she whispered, her gun steady. Footsteps echoed in the hall, heavy and fast. Sarah's heart pounded, but she stayed calm. The door rattled, then burst open. A man stood there, gun raised, his face hard. "Caldwell," he shouted. Sarah stepped forward, her voice loud. "Police." "Drop it." The man laughed, his gun aimed at her. "Move, cop, or you're dead." Ethan grabbed Sarah's arm, his voice desperate. "Sarah, don't." Sarah's eyes locked on the man's. "Last chance," she said, her voice cold. He smirked, but before he could move, Ethan shoved Sarah aside, tackling the man. The gun fired, the shot loud, missing Sarah by inches. Ethan wrestled the man to the ground, his hands shaking but strong. Sarah lunged, cuffing the man's wrists, her gun pressed to his back. "Stay down," she yelled. Officers rushed in, led by Mike. "Sarah, you good?" he called, pulling the man up. Sarah nodded, her breath fast. "We're okay." She turned to Ethan, who was standing, his face pale but fierce. "You saved me," she said, her voice shaking. Ethan shook his head, his hand finding hers. "You saved me first. We're even." Sarah laughed, tears in her eyes, and pulled him into a hug, holding him tight. The precinct calmed as the all-clear came. "All suspects in custody," Rodriguez said over the radio. Sarah exhaled, her body relaxing. She looked at Ethan, his arms still around her, and felt safe, loved. They stepped outside, the morning sun warm on their faces. Officers were wrapping up, the danger finally gone. Sarah's phone buzzed, a text from her dad. "Proud of you, kid." She smiled, showing Ethan. "He's gonna like you," she said. Ethan grinned. "Hope so." They walked to a quiet spot by the precinct, away from the chaos. Sarah looked at him, her heart full. "Ethan, this is real, isn't it?" He nodded, his hand cupping her face. "It's real. I love you, Sarah. I'm all in." She leaned into his touch, her voice soft. "I love you too. Let's do this." They kissed again, deeper this time. Thank you for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe to this channel. Meet you in the next video.